réussite de nos réunions dépend énormément de notre capacité à nous concentrer sur les sujets stratégiques et sur les questions marquées par le sceau de la priorité absolue. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, je conclurai donc mon intervention liminaire d'introduction à cette réunion du Conseil exécutif en remerciant sincèrement l'Angola, le président du Conseil exécutif et le ministre Tete Antonio, qui a dirigé ce Conseil pendant 1 an, qui a fait œuvre utile, et je tiens, au nom de la Commission, à le remercier. Je souhaite à votre auguste Conseil un plein succès dans le cadre de vos délibérations. Je vous remercie.
Merci, Excellence. J'ai le plaisir d'inviter maintenant Son Excellence Gédéon Timotheos, ministre des Affaires étrangères de la République fédérale démocratique d'Éthiopie, à donner son discours. Excellence, vous avez la parole.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Tete Antonio, Minister of External Relations of the Republic of Angola and Chairperson of the Executive Council, Your Excellencies, distinguished ministers, Your Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Your Excellency Salma Melika Hadid, Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Your Excellency Mr. Clever Gatete, Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great honor and pleasure that I welcome you all to the 48th Ordinary Session of the Executive Council of the African Union here in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Allow me also to express profound appreciation to the Republic of Angola and our dear brother, His Excellency Tete Antonio, for the very successful leadership of our Council in this past year. My gratitude also goes to the new team at the AU Commission, led by His Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf and his deputy, my dear sister, Her Excellency Salma Melika Hadid, for their commitment and dedication in the service of our continent. As we gather here today, sitting under the umbrella of our union, which was established with the purpose of achieving political independence and economic integration, we are reminded of the importance of unity for our collective security, independence, and prosperity. This past year, we have witnessed mixed developments in our continent. It is encouraging to note that we stood together to promote a common position with regard to UN Security Council reform, climate justice, and the reform of the global financial architecture. A common position on these matters was on display, in particular, in the first G20 held on African soil in South Africa, Pretoria. Several elections in our continent. The Republic of Guinea and the Republic of Gabon have also rejoined our union through the restoration of constitutional order. More and more countries are also relying on the AU Commission for electoral support and observation missions. These are some of the positive developments we need to consolidate and build upon. On the other hand, our continent is still grappling with incidents of unconstitutional change of government, which are undermining the normative foundations of our union. The evolving geopolitical landscape in which multilateralism and global cooperation are being eroded is also adversely affecting peace and security in our continent. Fierce competition for technological supremacy, control of critical mineral resources, and major logistics routes are becoming a dominant feature of international relations. Trade and economic cooperation are becoming subordinated to political and security considerations. In this context, many big and middle powers are viewing Africa as a site for their competition and as an instrument of their ambitions. Unfortunately, a mentality of domination, extraction, and exploitation still colors the prism through which many external actors view our continent. African unity must be real, and African Union must be strong if we are to defend our continent from predatory moves that might come from all corners. What we need is not mere charity or goodwill of others, but true partnership, and that, more than anything, requires true strength which emanates from unity. Therefore, I hope that this session of the Executive Council will contribute to bolstering our unity and revitalizing our commitment to our shared objectives. Excellencies, this is also a moment to reflect on the economic and social developments of the past year. In 2025, Africa strengthened its regional integration through Agenda 2063 and the African Continental Free Trade Area. The aspiration for a continental free trade area has now turned into a living reality, and its implementation is accelerating in multiple fronts. There have also been progresses in strengthening primary health care, improving our agricultural productivity, and tackling climate change. Our continent is making steady progress in the social and economic spheres, and the African Union is playing an important role in this journey. But the road ahead and the work that lies before us require greater unity and resolve. We are still very far from the Africa we want, and hence we need to redouble our efforts. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in the coming years, Africa's common voice must uphold African ownership of African solutions by defending peace, constitutional order, and sovereignty through strong continental leadership. We must also continue with our demand for fair global partnerships, and financial reform, including debt relief and climate financing, grounded in equity and respect. No global platform can be considered credible or be effective without Africa having its rightful role in shaping and influencing international decisions. Finally, as Ethiopia prepares to host COP32, I want to take this opportunity to assure you that we view this as an opportunity for Africa to lead the global conversation on climate justice and sustainable development. As the theme of this year happens to be sustainable water availability and safe sanitation, it also offers us an opportunity to carefully consider how we can rejuvenate the ecology from which our water resources originate. Africa is blessed with majestic rivers like the Nile, Congo, Niger, and Zambezi, and great lakes like Victoria, Tanganyika, and Malawi. Our approach towards these resources should be guided by the principle of Ubuntu, taking into account the needs, situations, and aspirations of all concerned. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, in closing, I wish to thank each member state for your continued trust and partnership. May the deliberations of this session strengthen our union and truly advance Africa's interest. I wish you all a productive and enjoyable stay. Amesagnalo, I thank you, merci beaucoup, shukran, obrigado, gracias, asante sana.
Merci, Votre Excellence, et j'ai maintenant le plaisir d'inviter Son Excellence Claver Gatete, secrétaire général adjoint et secrétaire exécutif de la Commission économique des Nations Unies pour l'Afrique, à prononcer son discours. Excellence, vous avez la parole.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Tete Antonio, Minister of External Relations of the Republic of Angola and Chairperson of the Executive Council, Your Excellency Mohamed Ali Yusuf, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Your Excellency Dr. Gideon Timotheos, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, Your Excellency Selma Malika Haddadi, Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Honorable Ministers, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor to address the 48th Ordinary Session of the Executive Council. On behalf of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, I thank the government and people of Ethiopia, our gracious host, and commend the African Union Commission for convening us at this critical moment for our continent. Indeed, we meet at a time of profound economic transition. As we speak, global growth is slowing, trade tensions are intensifying, and supply chains are being reorganized. Furthermore, capital has become more expensive, and development assistance that was once a predictable pillar of support is declining. This is exacerbated by a worsening security situation and persistent climate change. We are witnessing a transition to a world economy organized around industrial strategy, geopolitical competition, and control of key resources. In short, the rules of development are changing. For decades, developing countries relied on an external model: export raw materials, import manufactured goods, and finance development through concessional flows. But that model is no longer viable. The implication for Africa is clear. Our development can no longer depend primarily on external conditions. It must increasingly be organized around our own continental economic system. Across the continent, African governments are managing tighter fiscal space, higher borrowing costs, and limited credit ratings. It is not right that today only 3 African economies are investment rated, with 5 approaching investment grade status, while 19 countries have never been rated at all. This state of affairs significantly increases the risk premium African countries pay to finance development. But more than a fiscal challenge, it is also a structural one. When finance is expensive, infrastructure is delayed. And when infrastructure is delayed, production is constrained. And when production is constrained, industrialization stalls. Meanwhile, Africa possesses land, renewable energy potential, critical minerals, and a young labor force. But do we have the economic system that allows those assets to generate value? This is why the African Union's theme of the year, assuring sustainable water availability and safe sanitation systems to achieve the goals of the Agenda 2063, is so important. Indeed, water and sanitation are not merely social services, but economic infrastructure. When viewed through an economic lens, access to water becomes a measure of productivity readiness. However, across Africa, more than 300 million people still lack access to safe drinking water, and roughly 780 million lack adequate sanitation. Water-related diseases such as cholera, diarrhea, and typhoid continue to claim lives across the continent, causing approximately 115 preventable deaths every hour in African region, according to World Health Organization. The economic implication is significant. Poor water and sanitation reduce labor productivity, increase health expenditures, and discourage investment. Factories require reliable water supply, agro-processing requires irrigation, and cities require sanitation systems to function productively. In fact, investment decisions, including the location of industries and industrial parks, depend on reliable basic services, including access to water. But without reliable water systems, industrial zones cannot operate competitively, logistics hubs cannot expand efficiently, and urban economies cannot grow sustainably. At the Economic Commission for Africa, we view development as an integrated economic system. Infrastructure, finance, trade, and industrial policy function together. And water sits alongside transport, energy, and digital connectivity as a foundational input into economic production. When production inputs are unreliable, economies cannot manufacture competitively. And when economies cannot manufacture competitively, they remain exporters of raw materials rather than producers of value. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in Africa, if Africa is to compete globally, we must move beyond exporting raw commodities. We must process our minerals, transform agriculture, and produce higher value goods. This is the logic of value addition and regional value chains. In this respect, Africa Continental Free Trade Area represents Africa's foremost development platform, enabling production at scale and competitive industries within our continental market. As global trade fragments, regional integration becomes vital. I'm confident that Africa will industrialize because our continental market allows production to be organized internally. But it will require a policy response, which must be deliberate, coordinated, and anchored in our economic priorities. Allow me, Excellencies, to outline 5 priority actions for our collective attention. First, Africa must mobilize and manage development finance more effectively. To this end, we should strengthen domestic resource mobilization, as mentioned by the chairperson, improve public financial management, and enhance credit credibility so that African countries can access capital markets on fairer terms and reduce the cost of infrastructure financing. It is not right that Africa's tax to GDP ratio remains at 16% compared to 34% in EU. Additionally, innovative instruments, including green bonds, blue bonds, and blended finance, should be used to fund productive infrastructure, including water systems that support economic activity. Second, we must invest in integrated productive infrastructure. Water systems should be planned alongside transport corridors, ports, energy networks, and digital infrastructure so that they support industrial parks, logistics hubs, and productive cities rather than operate as an isolated sectoral projects. Third, we must accelerate value addition through regional value chains under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. African resources must increasingly be processed within the continent in agro-processing, pharmaceutical, manufacturing, and green minerals. This will allow our trade to move from raw exports to industrial exports. Fourth, we must deepen continental market integration. This requires full implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, including the removal of tariff and non-tariff barriers and the harmonization of standards. With efficient customs systems in place, African firms will be able to expand production across borders and anchor sustainable industrialization. Fifth, Africa must harness technology and data as economic infrastructure. Digital platforms, artificial intelligence, and data systems can improve tax administration, logistics management, trade, infrastructure maintenance, and industrial productivity. Investing in digital public infrastructure will strengthen state capacity and enable more competitive economies. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, Africa possesses the assets, the resources, markets, and demographic momentum to achieve structural transformation. What we must now build is coordination. Finance that supports infrastructure, infrastructure that supports industry, and industry that supports trade. If we finance our infrastructure, integrate our markets, add value to our resources, and trade more with each other, Africa will not just participate in the global economy, it will help to shape it. And the Economic Commission for Africa is ever ready to support this agenda in close partnership with member states, the African Union, and the regional institutions. I thank you very much for your kind attention.
Merci, Votre Excellence. Et maintenant, c'est avec un immense plaisir que j'invite Son Excellence Tete Antonio, ministre des Relations extérieures de la République d'Angola et président du Conseil exécutif de l'Union africaine, à prononcer son allocution. Excellence, vous avez la parole.
Muito obrigado por me passar a palavra, Excelência Gédio Timoteus, Ministro de Negócios Estrangeiros da Etiópia, Excelências, Senhores Ministros e Membros do Conselho Executivo da União, Sua Excelência Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, nosso caro irmão, Presidente da Comissão da União Africana, Sua Excelência Clavé Gatete, Secretário Executivo da UNECA, nosso caro irmão, Tinta Africana, distintos comissários da Comissão da União Africana, representantes
Welcome to Ethiopia, your second home. As you gather for the 48th Ordinary Session of the Executive Council and the 39th Ordinary Session of the AU Assembly, the vibrant city of Addis Ababa opens its arms to you. This year, leaders from across the continent unite under the powerful theme, assuring sustainable water availability and safe sanitation systems to achieve the goals of Agenda 2063. Together, we embark on a journey of meaningful discourse and shared visions for a brighter future. But it's not just about discussions within these esteemed halls. As you can see, the streets of Addis Ababa are alive with transformation, all ready to welcome you. Don't miss the iconic Adwa Victory Memorial, a symbol of resilience and pride commemorating Africa's triumph over colonialism. It stands as a testament to the determination of a people ready to defend their sovereignty. Once again, a very warm welcome to Addis Ababa, a city in motion and a destination that feels like home. Together, let's shape the future.
The AU 2026 Summit is a vital opportunity for Africa to utilize its water resources, a key driver of development, health and stability. With increasing water scarcity and regional management challenges, prioritizing equitable access, sustainable use and cooperation can enhance livelihoods, resilience and promote peace, focusing on water issues that will help mobilize resources, foster innovation and strengthen regional partnerships for prosperous Africa. Now, today, the 48th Ordinary Session has already begun at the AU headquarters in Addis Ababa, and I, Gamachisa Mandira, and Barakat Sisai will bring you the events of this AU Summit as it happens exactly at the headquarters. Stay with us. Hello, Barakat.
Hello, Gamach.
Leaders have spoken during this session, which has begun this morning. And of course, important points have been raised, of course, in this beginning session. And well, of course, water is a resource that is so priceless, and it is a base for everything that Africa wants to attain, especially for the Africa we want. And of course, leaders have spoken so far. And what do you think are the main issues that are to be addressed? And of course, I just would like to begin with, the recap from this morning's speeches by the leaders.
Okay, thank you very much, Gamachis, for the chance. I think it's better to begin by just giving our viewers, the context that we have been talking about. And today, we have witnessed the opening of the 48th, the ordinary session of the African Union Executive Council. And as we know that the Executive Council session is usually held before the main session or the assembly of the African heads of state and government. And it also follows the PRC meetings of the African Union. The PRC means the Permanent Representative Committee of the African Union, which exactly constitutes the African ambassadors and permanent representatives that are actually accredited to the African Union. So this session is actually following from the PRC meeting, which held almost 50 days back in Addis here, the diplomatic hub of Africa, and they have discussed almost over 2 weeks on some of the most important issues of the continent, which actually matters to the continent, the African Union, and the citizens as well. And they delivered on both the thematic areas, at the same time the institutional important area of the African Union as well. And the first of the discussion was I'm talking about the PRC, which held before this today's Executive Council meeting. They focused on the 2025 themes of the African Union. As we remember that the last year, which is the 2025, the themes of the African Union was reparations for Africans and for the African descents. There was injustice which was actually made against the Africans through the colonization and slavery as well. And the African Union was calling out for those who are actually just making that mistakes to make some sort of compensation for the injustice that happened on the African continent. And the PRC actually just gauge some of the gains in 2025 in terms of just having or bringing back some of the compensation related to the crime against humanity. And the PRC also, found that some of the countries, specifically, we can talk about the issue of, Algeria. Algeria is one of the countries that has actually made some progress in terms of just designating colonization and the act of slavery as an act of crime against humanity. So this was actually one of the major steps which was actually taken by some African countries, and Algeria could be one of the example in that regard. And the other most important thing which was actually discussed by the PRC were the institutional reform of the African Unions. As we know that the African Union has different kind of organs, and we know that it has 6 commissions. At the same time, we do have the African Union do have also many organs, many institutions as well. And we know that since 2016, as we all know that the reform of the institution actually championed by the Rwandan President Paul Kagame, and we have seen some progress in terms of just making effective the institution in terms of, budget, in terms of just implementation of the policies, strategies, and programs of the African Unions as well. And we have also, they have also deliberated on the peace and security situation of the continent. As we all know that there has been some sort of insecurities in many African continents and in many African countries as well. For example, if you look at in the Sahel regions and the Great Lakes region, even in the Horn of Africa, we have seen some conflicts and some anomalies, which is very much related to insecurity in the continent. And they have also delivered on that issues. They have also discussed about the regional integration, specifically the economic integration. In this case, they have also discussed about the African continental free trade areas. And as we all know that since 2021, since the start of the African continental free trade area implementation, we have also seen some positive progress in terms of just implementing and taking into effect of this the single market agenda of the African Union. And the PRC also discussed about the African countries' voice at the global stage as well. As we all know that for the first time the G20 summit was held in last year, and the deliberation of the PRC were very much focusing on how the African countries, specifically South Africa, during its its participation in the G20 and on how to raise the interest and the agendas of the African countries and the African Union as well. And African Union also member of the G20, and they also look at how the African Union also, working toward just pushing the agenda of the continent forward as well. So these are some of the points which was actually raised during the PRC meeting, which was before 50 days. And the primary objective, the primary, task of this Executive Council, which starting today is going to be review of the reports of the PRC. As far as my knowledge is concerned, there are about 20 reports which is actually reviewed by the PRC, and we do also expect the Executive Council will look at these reports and put forward some suggestion and recommendation on that as well. As we know that the PRC as well as the Executive Council is a preparatory body, and both sessions lay ground for the subsequent discussion or the high-level discussion. For example, the PRC lay ground for the Executive Council, and the Executive Council will lay ground for the assembly of the African heads of state and government. And the PRC also prepare some agendas for the Executive Council to deliberate on, and at the same time also drafted some decisions for the Executive Council as well. So these issues are going to be on the discussions on the table for the Executive Council members. So these are some of the general expected agenda on the Executive Council meeting, which started today morning.
Yes, Barakat, you have thoroughly explained, the relevant points to this particular summit, the AU 2026 summit. But what interests me a lot is, of course, the speeches from the leaders this morning has focused on the importance of water to ensure that, Africa meets its 2063 goals. And why is, at this particular time, the issue of water is so important? Well, the backbone of all these development endeavors, all these wishes for Africa, good wishes for Africa, development, prosperity, etc., they all are based on access to water and especially proper utilization of Africa's water resources. We know Africa is abundantly blessed with water. And the problem is, of course, for various reasons, Africa could not be able to utilize its water resources fully yet. And leave alone, utilizing its water resources fully, Africa has not been able to take, just a drop of or a drip of its water potential. So this morning, the leaders have emphasized that water is the base for everything that Africa wants to attain, by 2063, or at this particular moment, water happens to be, a very important, priceless resource for what Africa wants to attain. And why is it, the AU 2026 summit, should raise the issue of water at this particular moment?
Yeah, some of the points which was raised by the officials at the opening of the 48th organization of the African Unions were raised about the water, because this year, the 2026 theme of the African Union is assuring water availability and self-sanitation systems to achieve the goal of 2063. As we know that Africa is, it's a continent which is, blessed with so many kind of natural resources. One of it is the water, but that water availability is very much strained. We don't really know. It's very much related to, the capacity of the African countries, but the water availability specifically for its citizen is not as such as we expected. It fell short of expectation. Of course, we do have water resources. We do have lakes, rivers, and one of the longest river in the world, which is Abba, or the Nile water, is in the continent. But still, many African countries are actually suffer from the lack of waters. And some of the reports from the African Unions and some of the international organizations also show that around 400 million clean water.
Yes.
And at the same time, over 700 million people lack sanitation.
Yes.
So this is actually, I mean, stark realities. I mean, the material reality on the ground doesn't really show that Africa is actually in a scarcity.
Yeah.
We do have the resources.
Yes, but the point here is, of course, what should Africa do to be able to utilize, this abundant resource?
Yeah.
Which is, of course, so essential.
Yep.
Okay, no water, no life. Water is life. Yeah. And the need for Africa, to truly unite has been emphasized by the speeches, especially the notion of Ubuntu, which considers the needs and aspirations of all, was mentioned. And here, Africa is known to be, in trouble because it is not genuinely united to deal with, water issues and many other aspects that happen, in the African continent. So African nations, well, we can see that they're not working as collectively as they should. Okay, so water is, something that is so essential. Even though it is abundant, though it is around you, you need to do something, something real about it to be able to utilize it properly. Now, for instance, you need, the finance, you need the technology to access, just the water. And Africa's water does not come, from rainfall. It comes from, under the ground, beneath the surface. And does, Africa have, the necessary infrastructure, logistics, resources to be able to tap, just the water, for example, under the surface? Well, this requires, some kind of collaboration amongst, African nations. And of course, there are here political issues that intervene and disturb the relationship between, African countries. And water is not only a blessing, it is also a curse in many instances, because it is a cause for nations, to go into conflicts. And so for this, Africa needs to be united, and this unification needs to come from leaders, not only leaders, but also the people, African people, intrinsically. People need to be motivated intrinsically. They need to take, the initiative to genuinely unite and to work on, these water issues, to be able, of course, to meet, just water needs of African populations. Not only that, later in the speeches of the leaders, one thing has been, mentioned. Of course, Africa entirely relies on export of its raw materials, and no, we need to stop this, and then we need to produce, our products here. We need to establish industries, and when you do that, you need water.
Yes.
Don't you?
Yeah.
You need water for your factories.
Yep.
You need, of course, water for your working people. This water is everywhere. It's in agriculture, it's in industry, and it is, in Africa's every step towards, meeting its Agenda 2063. And, well, by the speech of the leaders, of course, Africa hasn't reached its goal yet, but progresses have been made. Considerable efforts have been put into bringing about, just the change Africa wants. And in terms of health, in terms of agriculture, in terms of, similar sectors, progresses have been made. These we cannot ignore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe just to add on what you have already mentioned, on how to achieve, the ensuring, water accessibility for the African citizens, for the African people. I think one of the major issues that's going to be delivered on this, the 48th ordinary session of the African Union Executive Council, is expected to deliver on the roadmap of, the water availabilities. Of course, most of the time the African Union is champion in terms of just, putting out like some ambitious plan. But the question is on how to realize that continental agendas. I think the major issue in this case is we as an African, we don't have that much sophisticated infrastructure. Just to leverage the amount of water that we have. As you have said, we have the water resources on the surface level, at the same time beneath the ground. For that we need to have infrastructural, developments. And in Africa, not only in the water sector, in general, we have a multi-billion-dollar gaps when it comes to infrastructure rollout. So, and the water sector as well, would you expect such a kind of rolling out of infrastructure by the African countries? Maybe it could be done by unilaterally at the same time, maybe in collaboration with some African countries as well. And in this case, I think one of the most important element is that finance. You know, if you don't have a finance, you can't bring it. This infrastructure. So we need to have that kind of infrastructure collaboration as well, and financial collaboration with other institutions and other actors as well.
Yes.
This is Africa, the cradle of humanity, the frontier of the future, a land of visionaries, creators and pioneers, a continent of unstoppable energy where innovation meets tradition, where voices rise, loud and fearless.
I am an African.
This is the heartbeat of a billion people, diverse, bold, united by a single purpose to tell our own stories in our own way. No borders, no barriers, no filters. A new era of African storytelling is here. From every corner of the continent, from the bustling cities to the quiet village, we tell Africa's story by Africans for the world. This is the land of a rising Africa, where Africa speaks and the world listens. This is why today we bring you POA, Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa.
Let us all unite and join together to give the best we have to Africa, the cradle of mankind and fount of culture, our pride and hope at the break of dawn. All sons and daughters of Africa, flesh of the sun and flesh of the sky, let us make Africa the tree of life.
If you don't tell your story, it will be told by others. They'll talk of hunger, they'll talk of war, they'll talk of conflict, but they'll not say the things that are happening in Africa that are positive.
This is POA, a very new media organization in Ethiopia.
We have to be voice for ourselves. There is no one else that can tell our story better than us.
If it's defending African matters, then go for it. Go for Pulse Media.
This is the Pulse of Africa. Tune in, follow the journey, and learn about the news and what's shaping our African continent.
I am really impressed by the work that they are doing by telling the African story from Africa for Africans. I think it's definitely needed.
Please subscribe to the Pulse of Africa on all platforms.
Viewers, we're back to you after a brief break. And of course, we'll bring you the events as they happen at the headquarters of the African Union in Addis Ababa, the 48th ordinary session of the Executive Council. Barakat, I think interesting things are happening at this time, particularly at the headquarters of the African Union. And water is, of course, the main point here, the theme here. And during this summit, we see the power of water, don't we?
Yep.
Water is, connected to anything that Africa is doing or Africa is dealing with. And it's the backbone of Africa's everything, we can say. So shall we continue on what are, of course, these water crises that are to be addressed or that we expect, to be addressed during the 2026 AU Summit?
I mean, as I've said, like one of the major problems when it comes to the availability of water is it's a lack of infrastructure, as I've said, and infrastructural gap is one of the major bottlenecks or setbacks that actually put a pressure on many African countries in terms of in their effort to, avail water, both at the household level or at a different kind of public offices, public institution as well. And as I've said, many African countries should think about on how to mobilize resources to upgrade and then develop, the up-to-date infrastructure, water infrastructure, and integrated water infrastructure that actually can serve both for the, for example, when you are actually letting the tap water to come to your home, you have to think about on how to use for that sanitation as well. So such a kind of integrated approach, is expected to be adopted by the Executive Council of the African Union in their final, report to the African Union Heads of State and Government reporters. I think these are some of the points that need to be mentioned, I think. And the other important things when it comes to the cross-border water resources, I think, as you have said, some of the water actually, it's a point of contentions. And the most important thing, I think, in this case is we need to have a collaboration on how to utilize the shared resources. In this case, water is a shared resource. Once it's across your border, it's the issue of, having, developing and then making it using for, the prosperity and the development of, countries. And there has to be, a political will to use it in a shared manner, so that Africa can easily benefit from such a kind of approach, so that Africa can easily achieve the Agenda 2063 as well. Because without water, you can't achieve anything. Water, the water role by itself was actually underscored by the Paris meeting. Is not simply a survival issue. It's also the issue of development, the issue of energy, the issue of geopolitical stability as well. So it's go beyond the normal definition of just for survival. Water is it's a part and a parcel of the political process, the part and a parcel of the economic process of many African nations. So I think the African countries, they should think about on how to utilize the amount of water that they have, because of course we are in the continent which is blessed with abundant resources. One of it's the water. We have a lot of water resources, but what we have fall short of expectation in this regard is on how to use it. So we have to carve out in terms of just a basic solution, and we'd expect the Executive Council of the African Union will deliberate on such a kind of issue and will come up with possible solutions in this regard as well.
Barakat, let's ask this question, which is, of course, what happens when you have limited water and when there is water crisis? How do you think it affects countries, communities, families, individuals? For instance, sustainable development. When you don't have adequate access to water, you cannot think of promoting sustainable development. So water is fundamental to achieving the AU's development goals. We know this. For example, if you have industries, if you have infrastructures, they need water. When you build roads, you need water. When you build industries, you need water. And so for people to consume it, to drink it, and at the same time your industrial infrastructure needs water. So without water you can do nothing. And how about just the health of communities? It's affected when you don't have water. For example, when people don't have clean water, people are exposed to diseases such as cholera. Yeah, sometimes it's maybe in some places just they have the size of close to a pandemic. Yeah, because of just lack of access to water. And food security, if you want to produce more to feed your people, you need water. And in places where we have lack of water, for example, when we don't have enough rain, then your agriculture gets affected badly, and agricultural produce becomes very low, which in some cases might lead you to hunger, famine. These are characteristics of African agricultural scenarios. In many African countries, there has been famine. There is still famine. There is hunger unfortunately in some places, and this is the result of lack of water.
Yeah.
And you may add.
I mean, just to add on what you have said, I mean, this theme actually came amid like an important, dilemma. Like the world is actually facing a climate challenge, a climate pressure, and
Yes.
As we all know that Africa is at the victim side of the climate change. Of course, we do contribute less than 4% of the climate change, but we actually, bear the burden of the climate change. And one of the result, or the manifestation of the climate change is the scarcity of water. And as you have already mentioned about, the reason why the AU make water as a theme is because the issue is a multi-sectoral issue. It's not confined to one sector. It's really, like touch each and every aspect of the human living as well. For example, as you have said, without water, agriculture is unthinkable. Without water, like production, specifically in the agro-processing sector, it's unthinkable as well. And the health of many African peoples would also be at risk if we don't have, the clean water, if we don't have, make sure that the availability of, clean water to the African people as well. So this issue is, it's go beyond, a single sector. It's really touched many sectors. So that's why the African Union is making this theme as an important, subject matter where it's really, wants to see African countries come together and to address this issue in a holistic manner, in a comprehensive manner. You can't really, beat such a kind of goals without, taking into consideration, issues, outside of, the water, something like this one, So we need to have, a comprehensive, holistic approach to bring about lasting solutions related to the scarcity of water. As I have said, many people are actually in need of, water, in need of clean water, and many of significant number of African population are still lack sanitation system. So this is actually the headache for many African leaders as well. So from now on, we do expect, specifically in this year's such a kind of issues will do some good things in terms of just reducing some of the problem related to the accessibility of water and sanitation as well. I think it's enough for now just to focus on the water and related issue. I think it's better to touch upon the other important issues that's going to be delivered on the Executive Council of the African Union, I think.
Yeah, but one last point, Barakat. Water translates into everything that we deal with, into our lives. For example, the ecosystem. When you have, enough water, adequate water, you have, fauna, flora, and then, wild animals, for example. These wild animals, they depend on the fauna and the flora. And, of course, these are also dependent on access to water. When you have, enough water, you have, trees, you have forests, and you'll have, an ecosystem that is balanced, and you can use this, for tourism. Unfortunately, again, in many African countries, despite the wildlife that Africa or respective African countries enjoy, they fled to, for instance, neighboring countries because due to lack of water, the forests, they get destroyed. And as a result, when the shelter of the wildlife or the wild animals are affected, destroyed, wildlife, flee to neighboring countries, for example. So many African countries have been, affected by lack of, water for their rain, for their forests, and it is, multifaceted. Water means, everything. Water means something, indispensable, and I think this summit has a very good point to raise, water issue. Yeah.
Yep.
So, shall we?
I think it's better to talk about, the other main agendas that's going to be up for discussion for the Executive Council members.
Yes. Okay, go ahead.
Maybe I think one of the major issues is going to be the peace and security. This is, one of the major agenda that's going to be on the table for the discussion. For the Executive Council of the African Union, as we all know that peace and security in Africa is somehow compromised in a different way.
Yes.
Specifically, if you look at in the Great Lakes region and the Horn of Africa and the Sahel region as well, we have seen, different dynamics of insecurities. And these 3 points, or 3 major regions are actually the hotspot of insecurity when you analyze or when you just give some look at the security situation of the African countries. Specifically, since 2020, many African countries are actually, specifically in the western part of the continent, they have been, experiencing the unconstitutional change of government. This issue also raised by the Ethiopian Foreign Minister at the opening of the 48th organization of the Executive Council of the African Union, and power need to be. The only way that you can seize the power is through election and peaceful manner. But in the African context, specifically in recent times, we have seen the unconstitutional change of government and military taking over of public office. For example, the case in Niger, the case in Burkina Faso and Mali is one of the case in point. And some of these countries, even these countries are actually suspended from the African Union activities as well. As Ethiopian Prime Minister, Mr. Gideon Timotheus also mentioned, some of these countries that had experienced the unconstitutional change of government reinstated to the African activities. For example, Guinea and Gabon are the 2 countries that have reinstated to the African Union activities. But the rest, specifically the Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, still they are suspended from participating in the African Union activities because of what they have actually did. And there is actually a tension between the African Union frameworks and the material reality on the ground whenever such a kind of things are actually happening. And we are impatient to see the realization of the Agenda 2063, even though we're not, sure whether we are going to be alive or not, but we are impatient to see, the prosperous, peaceful, and integrated Africa. And that's going to be realized only when the continent is peaceful. As we remember, the African Union also lay a ground for, realizing the silencing of the gun. This plan was targeted by 2020, but because of different factors, it didn't realize. And we can mention different kind of, a problem for the failure of the African Union or the African countries in terms of just beating that goal. But one of the major goals was the African Union failed to provide roadmap for the African countries to realize the silence of the gun and the continent. But in recent times, the African Union also, come up with roadmaps, which actually illustrates, the ways countries should go through and realize the silence of the gun. And in that document, it's depicted that African countries should work toward, eliminating the major cause of conflict. The first one is this poor governance, or the governance system of many African countries. And the governance of the African countries should be transparent as much as possible, so that people can have a trust on the government, can have a trust on the public institutions, so that they wouldn't really want to resort to the anti-peace solutions to get rid of maybe the party, something like this one. And the other one is the public official need to be accountable as well. And the issue of impunity in Africa is somehow, it's taking root, it's gaining traction, as many reporters also indicated that. So such a kind of, bad things need to be get rid of from the African countries' governance system as well. And even the democracy system needs to be robust as well.
Yes,
it needs to be
exactly
make sure the participation of the public as well.
Yeah.
And maybe just to add on one thing, the other major factor which is actually causing conflict in the African continent is it's because of the shrinking of the economic opportunities. And Africa is a continent of youth, and the youth need to be provided with the decent jobs. So the African governments, particularly, they have the prime responsibility. Of course, it's not only the responsibility of the governments, the public institutions, the private organization institution has also the responsibility. International organization has also, the responsibility in terms of just making sure the availability of decent jobs for the African youth, not to, just enhance their vulnerability for such a kind of engagement as well. And the other most important things, which is very much related to the political process, is the illicit proliferation of arms as well. One of the cases in Africa, so you can easily get, ammunitions, when there is something pop up. Maybe, for example, if there is a conflict, people, can easily have ammunition. They can have guns to point toward you. So such a kind of system. Just the system of controlling. The mobility, the movement of ammunitions, guns, and armaments need to be controlled by the African countries as well. So these are some of the root causes of the conflict, and the African countries need to work on that as well. And after the conflict also broke out, one of the most important things, which is also raised by the Ethiopian Foreign Minister Gideon Timotheus, also the African Union should ensure the ownership of the African peace process. African Union should take the lead in terms of mediating and finding a peace solution whenever conflicts pop up in different parts of the continent.
Yes, by the way, Barakat, these issues that you have mentioned now, they are so real that they are haunting Africa, the whole Africa. We can say most or majority of the African continent has been affected by conflict, lack of peace and security. And it is very likely that African leaders are expected to address these issues during this summit. Barakat, I think we need to tell our viewers that we'll take a break and we'll back to them after a brief break. Viewers, we'll be back to you after a brief break. Stay tuned.
If you don't tell your story, it will be told by others. They'll talk of hunger, they'll talk of war, they'll talk of conflict, but they'll not say the things that are happening in Africa that are positive.
This is POA, a very new media organization in Ethiopia.
We have to be voice for ourselves. There is no one else that can tell our story better than us.
If it's defending African matters, then go for it. Go for Pulse Media.
This is the Pulse of Africa. Tune in, follow the journey, and learn about the news and what's shaping our African continent.
I am really impressed by the work that they're doing by telling the African story from Africa for Africans. I think it's definitely needed.
Please subscribe to the Pulse of Africa on all platforms.
This is Africa, the cradle of humanity, the frontier of the future, a land of visionaries, creators and pioneers, a continent of unstoppable energy where innovation meets tradition, where voices rise, loud and fearless.
I am an African.
This is the heartbeat of a billion people, diverse, bold, united by a single purpose to tell our own stories in our own way. No borders, no barriers, no filters. A new era of African storytelling is here. From every corner of the continent, from the bustling cities to the quiet villages, we tell Africa's story by Africans for the world. This is the land of a rising Africa, where Africa speaks and the world listens. This is why today we bring you POA, Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa.
Welcome to Ethiopia, your second home. As you gather for the 48th Ordinary Session of the Executive Council and the 39th Ordinary Session of the AU Assembly, the vibrant city of Addis Ababa opens its arms to you. This year, leaders from across the continent unite under the powerful theme, assuring sustainable water availability and safe sanitation systems to achieve the goals of Agenda 2063. Together, we embark on a journey of meaningful discourse and shared visions for a brighter future. But it's not just about discussions within these esteemed halls. As you can see, the streets of Addis Ababa are alive with transformation, all ready to welcome you. Don't miss the iconic Adwa Victory Memorial, a symbol of resilience and pride commemorating Africa's triumph over colonialism. It stands as a testament to the determination of a people ready to defend their sovereignty. Once again, a very warm welcome to Addis Ababa, a city in motion and a destination that feels like home. Together, let's shape the future.
Viewers, we're back to you, and of course, we are raising issues that we expect to be raised during this summit. And of course, peace and security is one of the issues to be raised during this summit. Barakat, we're talking about, of course, peace and security in the African continent, and the fact that it is likely to be raised during this summit. It has relevance. Africa has been, as a continent, affected by lack of peace and security in the past, in the present, and obviously, of course, we can project that peace and security may not have the best solution in the coming few days, months, etc. Yeah, it will be, of course, a problem for Africa and for the world. Peace and security, we don't have perfect peace and security elsewhere, not only in Africa actually, and so. Why is it that the African leaders during this time should raise the issue of peace and security across the continent? We have lack of peace in different regions of Africa, West Africa, Central Africa, East Africa, etc. And leaders need to take measures, of course genuine measures, in order to address just the causes of conflict. Well, we know that resource grab is one cause for lack of peace and security in the African continent. And what should leaders, do you think, should do?
I mean, the most important thing, as it have also been mentioned by Ethiopian Foreign Minister Gideon Timotheus, as I've said also, he mentioned that the African countries should make sure that they are actually the owner of the peace process in the continent. Not only in the peace process, but also the African ownership. The African agency should come forward whenever there is a mediation, a peace building process in Africa. For example, like if you are talking about single keys for example, the Eastern DRC crisis. We have seen some peace agreements which signed in Dubai at the same time, which also, Qatar at the same time, a signing in the US as well. But there is a fall short of expectation in terms of delivering this peace deals. And one of the reasons many political analysts actually mention that it's because the African agency has been lack in that process. And there is a motto of African solutions to African problems. Of course, we have also seen some sort of, good progress. For example, if you remember, like back in 2022, when the northern conflict in Ethiopia was stopped, it was because the African Union also played an important role, and the PTO agreement also could be, taken as an example in terms of just putting an end to such a kind of conflict. So we do expect such a kind of experience to get traction in different parts of the continent as well. But in recent times, we haven't seen the African agency is actually in a full discipline in such a kind of, security situations. And these conflictual parties are actually, going outside of the continent to seeking a solutions, which is particularly, continental issues, which is particularly, local issues. So the African countries, specifically the African Union, should enhance its role in terms of just finding solution for such a kind of conflict-related problems in the continent. And the African countries have also, special responsibilities, in terms of just finding, sustainable solutions for such a kind of crisis. Of course, these problems are actually, it's a frequent one. There is a vicious circle of crisis in Africa. One problems, it might stop now, but there is a probability it will arise in the future, maybe in the near future as well. So, the problem is things are not going to be end in Africa when it comes to the peace and security situation. Maybe the solution is not actually addressing the root cause of it.
Exactly. The root cause needs to be addressed by the AU. Well, you've mentioned that the AU has been playing, crucial roles in ensuring peace. For instance, we can take Ethiopia. The Pretoria Agreement allowed to halt, conflict in Ethiopia for some time, and at least for some time. And of course, it avoided casualties, property damages, and if it was not, for the positive intervention of the African Union, well, Ethiopia could have been, in a very bad situation in terms of the destruction, the ongoing war, or was resulting in the northern part of Ethiopia. Well, in many African countries, the AU's role is crucial in ensuring peace and security. For instance, if we just go to the event, that took place in the US, which of course pioneered by the US president, as he brought together, these the Rwandan leader, the DRC leader, and other factions. Well, it was a very good thing. Unfortunately, before just these negotiators left the US, then conflict arose again, and then we had casualties in Central Africa, especially in Rwanda, in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And as you said earlier, this is due to the fact that the root cause has not been properly addressed. So what should the African Union do regarding ensuring peace, and especially identifying the root cause of conflicts in many African countries? So here I suggest, I believe there are unseen, unofficial matters to, of course, the AU or to the leaders in general who work, for ensuring peace and in different parts of Africa, especially, for instance, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and even in the Horn of Africa as well, and in many other places where we have, recurrent war or conflicts. So even though there is, there are some efforts by different parties, to come together to negotiate, to bring peace, and after some time, it gets, out of hand, and then countries, resort to conflicts again. And we know that there are many factors that need to be entertained in this peace process. And I think, those people, and in this case, knowledgeable people, you can call them, community members or scholars, need to identify, just these causes and then bring them to the attention of, African leaders so that, they will be formally entertained around the table. So this issue, peace and security, is likely to be entertained during this summit, Barakat.
Yeah.
So you may add, in case you have.
I mean, like you have already mentioned it, like what I was trying to tell to our viewers. I mean, but one of the most important things when it comes to, just securing stability and peace in Africa is dependent upon the will of the African governments as well, the leaders as well. Whenever some sort of, conflict pop up in this African member countries, African Union member countries, this country should take the initiative first to find a solution before they go out of the countries and the continents to find a solution for that. And as you have said, like the root cause of the problem need to get a proper solutions, unless otherwise peace in Africa would be on the paper. We can't deliver it on the ground. So this need to be underscored by the African leaders as well. And African Union, as I've said, should enhance its role. Most of the time, of course, we have seen that when African Union issues some communiques, some reports regarding like the situation in DRC, the situation in Sudan, in the situation in Libya, the situation in the three countries like the Mali, Burkina Faso, something like that. Of course, there is also a suspension of these countries not to participate in the African Union activities, but the African Union role should move beyond norm, like beyond the conventional way of addressing such a kind of matters. And there has to be platforms where African countries come together and find like sustainable solution for such a kind of problem as well. Even in the African Union, there is a principle of non-interference. We, the African peoples, are actually brothers and sisters. We can't sit and see the plight and the suffering of our brothers and sisters. This is the principle behind the African Union as a Pan-African institution as well. And there is a principle of subsidiarity as well. What African Union does need to be backed by the regional economic communities, the regional organization, and this rules and regulation need to be supported by the member countries of the African Union as well. So we don't have a problems when it comes to policies, programs and strategies, but the issue is on how to implementing such a kind of policies and programs and strategies as well. And this will rest on the political will of the African members countries and then their leaders as well. So these things will be high on the agenda of the 48th ordinary session of the Executive Council of the African Union as well.
Yeah, I also believe Africa's representation on the global stage will also be highlighted during this, of course, summit. Well, this has been, some kind of, it has been, problematic. African countries have been, echoing the need for Africa to have a better representation on global stage, because as Africa, puts effort to change its economic activities, the lives of its populations, then the global representation of Africa or the political position of Africa, the place Africa is given globally, matters whether or not it will be able to meet its goals, its development goals. For example, we have this Agenda 2063, and of course there have been attempts to show progress in every aspect, politically, socially, economically, but unless and otherwise, the position of Africa on the global stage is made better, Africa will have challenges to attain its goals. So I believe the leaders during this session will raise this issue so that Africa will have a better position on global stage. Yeah. If you take economy, for instance, your economic activities are influenced by the political position you have on global stage. And when African countries go their separate ways to meet their goals, then it's very unlikely that they will be able to attain it. Of course, during the speeches by the leaders today, Africa's unity has been emphasized. For African leaders, to have a better position globally in the world stage, Africans need to unite, need to come together and converge, just their power, their energy, their resources, so that they will have global ear. Yeah. Otherwise, countries, just go separately and then try to achieve it. Then that's very unlikely. Previously, when the OAU was established, back in the years, and when the AU was established, in recent years, well, the position, the global position, the political position of Africa has been, of course, a topic, but Africa has not attained that as it wished, because the unification of Africa has not really been genuine. It lacks, many things, many elements, and even though, of course, progresses have been made in unifying, African countries in different ways. For example, you have regional institutions, economic institutions that allow African countries have, better trade, better business integration, etc. Well, still, they're not adequate. Yep. And so this particular session is likely to raise this issue so that African leaders will really work on it genuinely.
Yeah, just to add on, or just to substantiate what you have already mentioned, of course, we have seen some progress in terms of just making the African interests, the African agendas forward at the international level. And this credit, I think, goes to the African Union and member country of the African Union as well. And for example, if you look at the G20 meeting, which was held in back in October 2025 in Johannesburg, South Africa, it was one of the major, platform in terms of advancing the African interest, the African agenda forward as well. And the representation of the African Union, the African interest at the global stage is a long overdue question of many of the African countries, the friend of Africa as well. And for example, the reform of the United Nations Security Council, it's a long overdue question of many African countries. It's yet to be realized. Of course, it's going to be realized soon, but it shouldn't be late as such as we have witnessed now. And even like at the international financial institution as well, the African interest, the African opinion, the African ideas still have been sidelined or marginalized from taking a traction, in terms of shaping the agendas of the international financial decision, the international economic decision as well. And for example, in the recent the Davos meeting, which was held in Switzerland, we haven't seen any agendas which is actually shaped by the African interest or the African agenda as well. Of course, the continent, which is which constitutes 1.4 billion people. Imagine this is a big continent, and you can't forget or refute. The most important role of the African continent as a whole, and then we shouldn't forget that we are amid global geopolitical tension. We are amid the geopolitical rupture as well, as the Canadian Prime Minister also said that there is a rupture that they have been observing at the rule-based international order, and a new international order is actually emerging, and Africa needs to play its own role that can actually serve its interest. And the African countries, member countries of the African Union, and then the African Union as well, they should come together, an unprecedented manner in terms of just advancing the interests of the African countries and the African Union as well. Unless otherwise, we can't have, like a continent that we actually wish to see by 2063 as well. And as you all know that, like many of the African continents, for example, if you talk from the economic perspective, are actually a frontier market. Many of the African countries are actually, of course, they are emerging one, but the frontier markets are also been emerging in the continent. So it shows that the promise of the African countries in terms of just making a stride, in terms of, the economic front as well. So you can't forget, the important value of the African countries, specifically those who are actually making a good stride in terms of just raising their GDP, raising, their macroeconomic platforms as well. So African countries, at the same time, the African Union's representation at the international level is, I think, the most important thing, and it's going to be high on the agenda of the 48th ordinary session of the Executive Council of the African Union today.
Yes, Barakat. I hope our viewers are following us very well, attentively, and I think let's take a brief break and then we'll back to them. Viewers, will be back to you after a brief break, and thank you very much that you are watching us.
Welcome to Ethiopia, your second home. As you gather for the 48th Ordinary Session of the Executive Council and the 39th Ordinary Session of the AU Assembly, the vibrant city of Addis Ababa opens its arms to you. This year, leaders from across the continent unite under the powerful theme, assuring sustainable water availability and safe sanitation systems to achieve the goals of Agenda 2063. Together, we embark on a journey of meaningful discourse and shared visions for a brighter future. But it's not just about discussions within these esteemed halls. As you can see, the streets of Addis Ababa are alive with transformation, all ready to welcome you. Don't miss the iconic Adwa Victory Memorial, a symbol of resilience and pride commemorating Africa's triumph over colonialism. It stands as a testament to the determination of a people ready to defend their sovereignty. Once again, a very warm welcome to Addis Ababa, a city in motion and a destination that feels like home. Together, let's shape the future.
This is Africa, the cradle of humanity, the frontier of the future, a land of visionaries, creators and pioneers, a continent of unstoppable energy where innovation meets tradition, where voices rise, loud and fearless.
I am an African.
This is the heartbeat of a billion people, diverse, bold, united by a single purpose to tell our own stories in our own way. No borders, no barriers, no filters. A new era of African storytelling is here. From every corner of the continent, from the bustling cities to the quiet villages, we tell Africa's story by Africans for the world. This is the land of a rising Africa, where Africa speaks and the world listens. This is why today we bring you POA, Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa.
Viewers, we're back to you. Barakat, I think we need to, of course, revise, what has taken place today. And, of course, until tomorrow, what will happen during this 48th Ordinary Session of the Executive Council of the African Union. Well, leaders have delivered speeches this morning. And we expect that the following topics or issues or themes will be entertained, in these 2 days. Of course, this morning, Ethiopian Foreign Minister, Dr. Gideon Timotheus, mentioned the need for Africa to unite, to come together, and he also spoke on the need for finance for trade facilitation in the African continent, and especially the fact that, African countries need to come together, and there are still, gaps that need to be addressed in order to attain the goals of Agenda 2063. And of course, in these 2 days, what will happen? We expect that the ministers that have convened at the AU headquarters in Addis Ababa will come up with a report of this Permanent Representative Committee, the PRC, and they will pass them on to the African leaders, the presidents, and etc., and with similar positions. And I think this, of course, the meeting of the leaders, the African leaders, will start taking place Saturday.
Yes.
Yeah. So before that, all these reports will be, included, and then they will be delivered, or they will be passed on to the leaders that, of course, will begin their meeting the coming Saturday. Yeah?
Yes.
If you add, anything else to this.
I mean, you have touched upon, the Executive Council, as we all know, that this is the policy coordinating body. So most of the time, its responsibility is to prepare agendas. At the same time, just prepares draft decisions for the African Union Heads of State and a Government Assembly or Summit. And under that banner, like the Executive Council expected to first discuss about, as you have said, the PRC reporters, as we have all know that the PRC also compiled the reporters of the discussion that they have held some days back, 50 days back, and they have delivered on some of the priority of the continent, and they have also passed on to the Executive Council. So today we'll deliver on this issue, some of the most important continental issues, which is ranging from peace and security, and they are the most important things, the African Union participation in the G20, as well as we have discussed about. For the first time, the G20 was held in the African soil in Johannesburg, South Africa last year, and we have seen some progress in terms of advancing the African interest at the global stage, and this will also put on the table for the discussion of the Executive Council members or the African foreign ministers, and they gauge it and then also put forward some solutions or some maybe direction on how to elevate the African interest at the global stage as well. And the other most important things that's going to be deliberate on this Executive Council is the election and appointment of the African Union organs and institutions. African Union, as we all know, that it has different organs, different institutions and agencies, which is actually operating under its subsidiary, under its auspices. So for that, they're going to be an election, an appointment. And of course, previously there has been some discussion on how to elect, officials for this office. They have put forward some regulations, some, the rule of engagement in that regard. And I think we expect them to discuss about such a kind of issue at this Executive Council meeting, which started today and will also continue until tomorrow as well. And we do expect them, the review of the implementation of the Executive Council decisions on the SAC process, which is very much technical issue on, this is very much related to on how to make the African Union effective in its operation, its activity as well. So this also expected to be at the agenda of the discussion of the Executive Council meeting. And as I have said, this Executive Council is very much dependent upon the report of the PRCs, which is, like the preparatory body as well. Like, they have deliberated on like many of the continental issues, and even like they take longer time than the Executive Council. Most of the time, the Executive Council takes 2 days, but the permanent representatives and the ambassadors of the African country who are based in here, most of the times, almost the tradition. The traditional aspect of just having a meeting before the African Union always held almost over 2 weeks. And for example, this year they held the discussion almost over 2 weeks, and they deliberate on like the most important issue of the continent, so that this report will be on the table.
Yes, Barakat, one thing I believe will change the course of Africa's path throughout these years is changing its economy for the better. Yep. And that is, of course, minimizing, imports of its raw materials, and then maximizing, its value-adding schemes or industrialization. So African leaders, these ministers, are likely, to discuss in these 2 days, today and tomorrow, how to be able to change this, relying on export of raw materials, and again just keeping this low level of industrialization. And I hope, as you said earlier, this will be deliberated on and then passed on to the leaders, who will convene on Saturday, and then they will make informed decisions, the leaders.
Yep. Maybe like as you have said, like economic independence is one of the most important subject matter. Even the Ethiopian Prime Minister doing his opening speech, he was actually saying that African country or the Africa continent as a whole should no longer be onlookers of what's happening in the world. We should craft our own like our own paths in terms of just shaping the agenda of the world as well. We are actually amid geopolitical tension, geopolitical fractures as well. So Africa is one of the important continents in terms of just changing the world for the better,
Yes.
So that would be, I think,
yes, Barakat. Of course, as the 48th ordinary session of the Executive Council of the AU take place today and tomorrow, Pulse of Africa, POA, will bring the event. And viewers, of course, I, Gamechi Samandida, and my colleague, Barakat Sisai, will bring these events as they happen exactly at the headquarters of the African Union. So we would like to encourage you to follow us on our social media platforms, and for you see what it is like, of course, to be observers of this great continental summit. Thank you very much for watching, and tomorrow also we'll meet you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Pulse of Africa, your gateway to Africa's vibrant stories, voices and visions. Join us every Monday and Wednesday for POA in Depth, where we provide sharp analysis of pressing current affairs, keeping you informed and engaged. Tuesdays feature the Africa We Want, dedicated to the African Union's Agenda 2063, discover Africa's journey toward a prosperous and integrated future. On Thursdays, tune into El Dorado, highlighting Africa's rich natural resources and how they can drive true prosperity. Fridays bring you Roundup, where seasoned journalists discuss enduring issues shaping our continent's destiny. Saturdays showcase the editorial, offering Pulse of Africa's perspective on Africa's challenges and opportunities, and celebrate the notables, recognizing remarkable Africans making a difference. And don't forget, Sundays are for Africa Melody, honoring our culture, music and entertainment. So tune into the Pulse of Africa and experience the vitality of our continent every day of the week. Subscribe now.
If you don't tell your story, it will be told by others. They'll talk of hunger, they'll talk of war, they'll talk of conflict, but they'll not say the things that are happening in Africa that are positive.
This is POA, a very new media organization in Ethiopia.
We have to be voice for ourselves. There is no one else that can tell our story better than us.
If it's defending African matters, then go for it. Go for Pulse Media.
And this is the Pulse of Africa. Tune in, follow the journey, and learn about the news and what's shaping our African continent.
I am really impressed by the work that they are doing by telling the African story from Africa for Africans. I think it's definitely needed.
Please subscribe to the Pulse of Africa on all platforms.